Welcome to Biology My Passion. I am Soumya Harikrishna. We are learning the chapter Ecosystem. Next function of an ecosystem is energy flow. So I will tell you a few features of this energy flow or the food chains that exist in nature one by one. So you have to listen very carefully. These all seem to be simple, but a lot of concepts are being discussed here. We know that plants are the only organisms which can produce organic material, that means by the process of photosynthesis. Why? Because all the organisms on this earth have only one source of energy, that is sunlight, except certain hydrothermal vents or a deep thermal vents under the sea. Otherwise, all the organisms which are exposed to sunlight means the only celestial object is the sun for us to get the energy from. And even though we are also exposed to sunlight, we are not able to make our own food. That process can be done only by plants, green plants, and only certain photosynthetic bacteria. From solar energy, a large amount of light is coming. Of that, visible spectrum only can be used by the plants for its photosynthesis. So 50% of the solar radiation is used for heating up the atmosphere, whereas the rest 50% is only the photosynthetically active radiation, or we call it as PAR. PAR stands for photosynthetically active radiation. That is only 50% of the total sunlight falling on the earth, that is radiant energy. In that 50%, again plants can make use of only 2 to 10% of the energy. So that means a very small fraction from the, suppose 50% of the solar energy of the 2% plant using, means from overall sunlight only 1% is utilized by plants. So that is in a during a photosynthesis, green plants utilize only 1% of the solar energy, total solar energy. But from PAR they make use of 2% to maximum 10% only. Okay, so once it is captured by plant, they are the producers, or they are the only ones which can make food. So rest all organisms on this earth, they depend directly on plants by consuming, or indirectly on plants by consuming the organisms consumed plants. So here rest all are called the consumers. So I have given a food chain to explain all these aspects to you. Here the food chain consists of grass as a producer. Grass is eaten by a grasshopper. Grasshopper is eaten by a frog. Frog is eaten by a snake. Snake is eaten by a hawk. So the solar energy, that is from PAR, 2 to 10% of the PAR is taken by the producer, that is the green plant, or in this case it is a grass, because here we have shown a grassland food chain. In this, the producers are actually, if it is terrestrial ecosystem, mostly herbaceous plants and woody plants are the major producers, whereas if you go to aquatic systems, there phytoplanktons and algae and other higher plants there in water are the chief producers. So from this producer, by consuming these plants, grasshopper will get energy. That means there is a flow of energy happening. Only by eating plants, the energy contained in the plant will go to the grasshopper. So this grasshopper can be considered as a consumer. But there are many consumers which are indirectly depending on plants. So the one which is directly depending on plant is a herbivore, and that herbivore can be called as a primary consumer. So you know, other ecosystems, if you check forest or other ecosystems, you know that there are many herbivores, like cows are there, deer, rabbit, all these are there, or zebra, all these are primary consumers or herbivores. Now, a herbivore is eaten by a carnivore, but carnivore again can be of different levels. So the first carnivore which is coming under the secondary consumer, that is frog here, because frog is eating a herbivore. So the one which is eating a herbivore is the secondary consumer, because in consumer level it is the second one, but it is a primary carnivore because it eats the herbivore, and that is coming in the next to grasshopper. Then the frog is eaten by a snake, where snake is also a carnivore, so it is a secondary carnivore but a tertiary consumer. It is eaten by a hawk, which is a tertiary carnivore, but it is a quaternary consumer. So here 4 consumers are there, or here we can say hawk is the top carnivore and there is only one producer. Can we start a food chain without a producer? Obviously not. The producer should be the first level, right? So each level in a food chain is called a trophic level. I have written here TL. TL stands for trophic level. So trophic level means what? Each level in a food chain is called a trophic level. So these levels are actually representing a functional unit, not a species. I cannot say that only frog species is the trophic level. No. The frog can or a bird, if I am saying a bird, I will tell you an example. If a bird is eating a seed or a fruit, then the bird is coming in the primary consumer or the second trophic level. Whereas if the bird is eating a worm, then it is coming to the third trophic level. Understood? So it's not a species representing, but it is the functional unit of this food chain. So there are different trophic level, but trophic level we have to start from the first level. Herbaceous plants or the, green plants or the autotrophs are there, followed by that the animals will come under second, third, fourth, fifth trophic level. But can we have many trophic levels, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? No, mostly the limited number of trophic levels are present in a food chain. There is a reason for that. I told you here is an energy flow happening. So the plant will produce, that is eaten by grasshopper, then grasshopper will get the energy, grasshopper it is eaten by frog, frog will get that energy, and so on. But we know that, we learned about the productivity last class, GPP minus R, only NPP will be available, or 10% of energy only will be available from one trophic level to the next. In that case, if you see, if the grass has got 1 lakh joule of energy in it, only 10% of it, that is 10,000 joule will be available to grasshopper. 10%, how will you calculate? 10% means 10 by 100 of this 1 lakh. So what do you get? 10,000 joule of energy. So each level you have to reduce 1 zero. That is how it's easy to write 10%. So 1 lakh will become 10,000 joule. 10,000 joule will become 1000 joule when it goes to the third trophic level. In the fourth trophic level only 100 joule is left, and the fifth trophic level only 10 joule is left. So the energy is decreasing. So if you go further, the energy available is very minimum. It cannot sustain a trophic level. So the number of trophic levels are limited in a food chain. That is another point. And here we saw one more thing, that is unidirectional flow of energy. Unidirectional flow of energy means what? From the sun, energy is captured by herbivores. Producers. Producers, it goes to herbivores. Herbivores, it goes to the carnivores. So there is only unidirectional flow. We cannot expect a carnivore being eaten by a herbivore to get the energy back, or a plant cannot eat a herbivore to get the energy back, or from plant it cannot go back to sun. So it's only one direction it will flow, unidirectional flow of energy. And here number also, the number of organisms in the producers will be higher than the consumers. Then primary consumer number will be less in the secondary, tertiary, quaternary. So you know that in a forest, if you look at the plants, large number of plants are there. When you come to the primary consumers, like for example rabbits or deer, their number is also quite high. But in a forest, the top carnivore like lion and tiger, how many will be there? Very few, 1 or 2 or maximum 3, very limited number. Why? Because that energy that is available to that trophic level is very less. So the number is limited when it goes to higher levels. Law of thermodynamics means first and second laws of thermodynamics are followed here. First law of thermodynamics says that energy can neither be created nor be destroyed, or it can be converted from one form to the other. Here also that is happening. From the sunlight, the energy coming in the form of light energy, it is converted into the form of chemical energy and transferred in the form of chemical energy through different levels of the food chain during the energy flow. So it is following the first law of thermodynamics. Second, suppose once it is eating, will that be enough for it, or we are taking one time food and that is enough for us to sustain? No, the energy need or energy input should be constant. Constant solar input is required for the plants to make the energy, and because we are losing it in the form of respiratory law, so we have to compensate it. So that is applicable to all. So constant energy supply is needed to sustain or overcome the entropy. So this is the second law of thermodynamics. And in a food chain, it is going in a straight line, but any stage it can die also. It's not necessary that the frog should be eaten by a snake. It can die at that stage. Wherever any organism is dying, from there the next type of food chain starts. That is called that is detritus food chain. For example, this food chain is called the grazing food chain. One is eating the other. That food chain is called a grazing food chain. And when any organism is dying, it can be in the form of grass also. All the grass is not eaten by the grasshoppers or any other animal. It will die. So there starts the detritus food chain, or the plant becomes detritus and it will start detritus food chain. So two types of food chains are there, grazing food chain and detritus food chain. Through both energy is flowing. And one more thing, this kind of energy representation, energy flow or a food chain is only a hypothetical situation. It's not necessary that a plant is eaten only by a grasshopper. A bird can also come and eat the plant, or if it can be eaten by a grass or a cow or a zebra or a rabbit or a deer, any animal. So there is always a choice. A frog is not only eaten by a snake, any other animal can also eat frog. So it can be an interconnected network of food chain, that is called a food web. So in reality, in nature, what is existing? Food web, but in this is only a hypothetical representation of energy flow. Just now we saw one food chain. Any organism dying in the food chain will become detritus. From there, the next energy flow starts, that is called a detritus food chain. So detritus food chain, mainly heterotrophs or decomposers are there, bacteria and fungi. So if you see GFC and DFC, it has got certain differences. First of all, in GFC, detritus is the, grazing food chain. It is the involvement of organisms on the basis of their food habit or the trophic level. Whereas in detritus food chain, it starts with the detritus, which is the non-living component, or means the dead organic matter, where here it is starting with the green plants. Now, energy flow, if you see, compared to grazing food chain, detritus food chain will witness more energy flow. So other functions also you can see now. So all the nutrients available in a particular region at a time is called a standing state, that we already discussed in the previous video. When you compare the rate of energy flow, detritus or grazing food chain, which is happening more, if you see on the land or the terrestrial ecosystem, detritus food chain is more than grazing food chain. Whereas in aquatic system, the detritus is less than the grazing food chain. Why? Because on the surface of Earth, that means in the terrestrial ecosystem, large species of plants and animals are there. As I mentioned, they may not be completely eaten by the other trophic level. Other than that, they die of also, since because they are large in number. So that they turn into detritus immediately. So the detritus food chain is acting more on the terrestrial ecosystem. Hope you understood all the concepts well. If so, like, share and subscribe to my channel Biology My Passion. Thank you for watching.